doing cost cutting on high interaction touch points is a poor idea, pun 100% intended. We're doing things a little bit differently today. We're actually in Austin, Texas, and we have the keys to 2022 Genesis G80. All I'm gonna ask is that if you enjoy this video, you throw it a like, and if you wanna make content like this possible, that you subscribe. Without further ado, let's get out onto the road. Alright, so everyone kind of knows the GV80 SUV that Genesis makes as a sort of budget Bentayga. In fact, some people believe that it looks better than the Bentayga. And in my opinion, the G90 sedan, which is the largest sedan that Genesis makes, is kind of like your budget Maybach. It's like this luxury sedan with an ambiguous look that just screams luxury, screams class, yet obviously costs a significant chunk of money less than, say, a Maybach. In that case, that makes the G80 sedan here, the middle tier sedan of the Genesis lineup, an even more budget-friendly kind of luxury look, expensive feeling sedan. Starting at just under $48,000, this car, even as equipped here at just over $49,000, including destination, is a tremendous value. This really is your everyday man's luxury sedan, and size-wise, it of course competes more or less with the likes of a Mercedes E-Class, a BMW 5 Series, Audi A6, a Lexus ES, and so on and so forth. But it has one hugely apparent strength, in my opinion, which is that it seems and feels as though it is much more expensive than it is. One way in which this is super obvious is that you don't notice a bunch of blank switches, and you're not very quickly and easily made aware of the options you're missing. In fact, I had to do a little digging to realize, this is a standard package vehicle, effectively a very base G80, and despite that, I was like, wait a second, so what am I missing? Why aren't there all these blank switches? It's because Genesis is very strategically integrated additional features in a way that keeps a more base car feeling very upscale. Now on this front, I guess the Germans could learn a thing or two, because they love throwing as many possible blank switches in your face to let you know what could have been if you had dropped even more money and gotten a more higher spec vehicle. Again, that's not the case here, and furthermore, the use of materials, just about everywhere you look, touch, feel, is of high quality. You actually don't have leather seats here, although the leatherette vinyl feels very nice. Again, it looks very nice. You have a leatherette dash, just high quality use of materials. The one area where I can kind of ding a little bit of points is this center airbag portion on the steering wheel. It's scratchy plastic, and I think if they had just opted for a slightly nicer kind of faux leather feel here, then I couldn't make a single complaint about the quality of materials being used here on the G80. The switchgear is delightful. Another area where certain brands, I'm not going to name names, can learn a thing or two. Why is Genesis able, especially in a sub $50,000 car here, to put really nice feeling window switches, mirror controls? I mean, everything you touch and feel, even the turn signal stock, the wiper stock here, everything has a high quality upscale feel and touch to it, and even a look for that, for that matter. It's lovely, and it makes you think why and how some of these other luxury brands don't incorporate more high quality material use, because it's the stuff that you interact with the most. It's the one area you shouldn't cheap out. It's almost as if the South Koreans have recognized that doing cost cutting on high interaction touch points is a poor idea, pun 100% intended. And just driving this around Austin, I have been so pleasantly surprised. And on the front of luxury, both look and feel, it's outperformed my wildest expectations. Stepping on it, the 8-speed transmission is all right. It's not the most aggressively programmed transmission, but again, this is meant to be a comfortable car. And the steering, I would say the same. You do have different drive modes, so if I put it or pop it into sport mode, it's a little bit more responsive for sure. And it's a turbocharged power plant, so you can definitely get into boost and zip around, if you will. It's quick more than it's fast, if that makes any sense. It has no problem putting the power down, which is why I don't necessarily think all-wheel drive in this case is worth it. for the added weight and the slight ding on fuel economy, as well as the added cost of just getting it in the first place. But yeah, the steering gets a little bit artificially heavier in sport mode, and I don't mind having these drive modes because being able to pop it into sport mode, for instance, for little moments when you really want to be on a twisty road and have a little more control is nice and does make a slight difference. But honestly, popping it right back into comfort is where I've been leaving it. It's just a pleasure to drive. You could steer with a finger, and it's just cozy. The suspension just strikes the perfect balance between comfort and confidence inspiring, and wafts down the road at a level which would fool you into thinking or believing that it is an adaptive suspension. No, it's just a really well damped suspension. Soft and supple, and just soaks up. I mean, I'm hitting decently sized bumps here. I wish you guys could see, and it's certainly not a stiff car, and in this application, that's perfect. Now moving on to the looks. That's, I think, something very important here with the Genesis. Genesis on its own self is a relatively new brand, but it's always been a subsidiary of Hyundai, and now they've really branched out to be their own brand, in the same sense that Lexus is the luxury version of a Toyota, or that Acura is a luxury version of a Honda. What's the good news in that front? You really find a lot of people staring at this car confused at what it is, and often thinking / assuming that this costs more than it really does. Now, part of that is because, again, it's a very high quality feeling vehicle, and jumping inside doesn't immediately make you go, oh no, actually it's probably $50,000. No, it's that the look is very sharp. That front grille, it's now a signature of the Genesis lineup, really stands out. I'm usually not a big fan of chrome, but the chrome and silver accents all across this car, especially in contrast to this dark kind of grayish green color, really stand out and make you feel, well, it makes the car look as though it's far more expensive than it is. And then again, the inside helps corroborate that by feeling very nice as well. And at just under $50,000, there's no denying that this is a fairly affordable luxury vehicle, but that's because this is effectively a base model G80. So this is a rear wheel drive 2.5T G80, which means that it has a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine producing 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. Now there is a larger 3.5T power plant available. Now that's a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 producing 75 more horsepower and nearly 400 pound-feet of torque. So if you really are craving a bit of a quicker, slightly more potent G80, of course the 3.5T is the way to look. Furthermore, both the 2.5T and the 3.5T come in both a standard rear-wheel drive and an optional all-wheel drive. Again, this is the rear-wheel drive 2.5T, so it's the most affordable power plant you can get your hands on when it comes to a G80. But like I said, it's not too bad. I put my foot down. It takes a second, but it picks up speed quick enough. I would call this an adequate power plant. Because I personally believe this is a luxury, comfy, classy vehicle, I'm not out here craving more performance out of this. Now, if that was really my true desire, I'd be looking at the German counterparts. Obviously, you're gonna shell out quite a bit more coin, but let's say I'm looking at a nearly $70,000 fully loaded 3.5T prestige package G80. I'd maybe consider spending $5,000 or $10,000 more and looking into the likes of maybe a more base model BMW M550, a Mercedes E53, or even a Mercedes E450, even a BMW 540, because the German counterparts are definitely a little bit more accustomed to making sportier vehicles, but this is just all about South Korean luxury. Now for the 2022 model year, Genesis has introduced a sport model for the G80. And while it both gives you a slightly different exterior or front fascia, rear fascia, which does look sportier, gives you a normal 3-spoke steering wheel, which is a gripe I'm about to get to in a second about this steering wheel, and some other niceties, I'd probably still stick with a 2.5T. And the only thing I would, even a rear-wheel drive personally, because it's lighter and better on fuel, the only thing I would do is potentially add on that advanced package, which is just a few $1,000 more than this, and adds a few niceties, which is going to go right into the gripes I have. So the first gripe I have is the steering wheel. Now that doesn't change regardless of the standard or the advanced or even the prestige package, but why couldn't Genesis just put a normal 3-spoke steering wheel? Look, a flat bottom, I understand, but doing this weird semi, 2-spoke with this little just a weird steering wheel, and it makes certain hand positions uncomfortable or impossible for that matter. The only thing I've noticed is you can put your hand kind of in a weird way into the steering wheel. The point is, I just put a normal 3-spoke, so maybe the sport model for that one factor is better. But the advanced package does offer, like I said, a couple niceties that this is missing. And despite Genesis doing a pretty good job of hiding what you're missing, one thing that became pretty quickly and immediately apparent to me was a lack of a sunroof. And I think having a sunroof would have been I wouldn't have been able to tell that this was a pretty base model. But looking up and seeing just headliner, oh, look, this is probably base. So getting that advanced pack, you get the sunroof, you get a much nicer looking sound system that I'm sure sounds better as well. The reason I say it looks better is you get a really nice speaker grills here on your door cards, and it definitely adds to an even more luxurious feel in the cabin as you look around, but I'm sure it sounds better as well. On top of that, you get a power rear trunk. Another one of those little things you do notice as you begin to live with this car, having to pull that trunk down versus pressing a button. Because it has such a luxury feel, you start to become accustomed to having things like a power tailgate. And it comes with 19-inch wheels as well as ventilated front seats and a heated steering wheel. Once again, I love the way they incorporate the ventilated front seats. All that happens is in this little center stack digital screen, the button layout changes a little bit to add space for that ventilated seat alongside the heated seat you have here. So again, lovely integration. I barely noticed I was missing ventilated seats aside from being hot in this Texas heat and maybe wanting some ventilated seats. What I love is that, again, despite being base, you have keyless entry standard, you have blind spot monitoring standard, you have lane keep assist standard, you have front collision warning standard. You even have adaptive cruise control standard. So you get all of these luxury amenities that you come to expect in a 2022 model year car here in 2021. It's all standard. So again, you can add the flourishes as you go. You can add real leather seats if you go for the prestige pack. You can add the nicer sound system, the sunroof, so on and so forth. But to me, that sweet spot is the advanced package on a 2.5T. You get a few of the extra niceties. You still keep that price sub $55,000, and you're just getting a tremendous value when you compare it to the likes of an E-Class 5 Series A6. Now, I will say, compared to the Lexus ES, which is also decently priced and feels of quality, and the Volvo S60, which I just drove, that also, it's a bit smaller and it's technically a compact, so it kind of competes more with the C-Class and the 3 Series. That would be the G70's territory. But because the S60 is a very large compact, creeping towards this segment and almost this big, and because I just drove one, I'm going to include that as well. And all I'm going to say is that the Volvo and the Lexus, while they're lovely cars, they come from, two brands that have a ton of history at this point. Some of which is great, but some of which kind of makes anyone see your car and know what it is. Sometimes thinking that your car is worse than what it is. And in this case, as I mentioned earlier, it's the complete opposite. It's such an ambiguous brand, and the car has such a polarizing look to it that it almost always punches above its weight class, and is sure to leave you as an owner fairly happy that people think your $50,000 or $50-ish thousand car is closer to 2 times that value. Now, there's plenty of space in this interior, and legroom in the rear is lovely. Of course, the G90 is an absolute land yacht and has even more space, but here in the G80, you can easily and very comfortably fit 4 full-size adults, such as myself, who's about 6'2", with no problem, and even a 5th one in the middle, just that the center tunnel gets in the way a little bit down below. Again, it's just a very, very comfy place and a very high-end, upscale feeling place to spend time in. Now, it wouldn't be right without a quick and Texas-style tall boy test, so let's jump into that, and then we'll wrap the video up. Now, I've kind of glossed over one major component of the interior, which is this massive and lovely 14-inch or over 14-inch display. It's just absolutely massive, like a super ultra wide television. It's probably the widest screen I've ever seen in any sort of car, wider than those you'd find in the likes of a new MBUX system equipped Mercedes. It's just massive. But let me say this, the controller for it kind of sucks. It's not as bad as the Lexus trackpads by any means, but it's not the most intuitive, and it's not just a regular dial style controller like you'd find in a BMW with an iDrive system. It's a little finicky, but the good news is the screen itself is touchscreen. It's just a bit of a reach to lean forward, and if you have very long arms or if you sit close, up to the dash, you won't notice that quite as much. But for me, even being a little taller, I have to lean forward to interact with it just because it's set further back on the dash. Again, small complaint, just the controller isn't the most intuitive and a little finicky. But what I don't love is this gear selector. It's kind of like the Range Rover system where you have to twist it into a certain position, although it kind of always springs back to center, and the park button is the best part of it, which is just in the middle. You just press down. I just noticed that when you start the car up and you want to go to reverse, you always kind of think to yourself, do I go to the right or do I flick it all the way to the left? You get used to it, but it's one of those moments where it's like, why reinvent the wheel? Just put a gear selector, or maybe even a column mountain gear selector would have been a nice option in this case. But these are small complaints on an otherwise very pleasing vehicle to spend time in. I did not mention also that the seats, despite looking good, are also just very comfortable. This Genesis has smart posture care, I believe is what it's called, which if you put in some information about your height and weight, uses biometric information to make slight adjustments to the mirrors, or if you had a head-up display, to the head-up display, and even to the lumbar support to best support you and keep you in a healthy and comfortable position. So it's just a lovely, lovely car to spend time in. Not sporty, but extremely luxurious at a very, very palatable price point. And all I can say as I cruise through downtown Austin here is that if you guys enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. If you want to see more videos like this, they're dropping every single week on Fridays. Like the video, comment down below, and let me know what you guys want to see. I'll do my best to make it happen. As always, this is Rio. Peace out.